What's up, guys? It's Dave Gold. We're back with another episode of the Dave Gold Evolve podcast, where I interview industry leaders in the spiritual, dating, and business world. And yes, you hear Tina Turner because she's asking what's love got to do with it. And today, we've got our special guest, Billy Mann, who's an expert on love. And he's coming to you from our sponsor at the Self Love Army. So we're quite delighted to have you here today, Billy.
Hey man, I'm delighted for the invitation, Dave. Thanks very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Amazing.
An expert in love, we'll see.
We will see. Now, before we get into that debacle, first, how about you give us a little bit of a story of your life and your journey to go from just a boy in Ireland to a hairdresser to now a, kind of spiritual dating coach?
It's funny. I literally stumbled into hairdressing entirely by accident. Literally, I was a forester before I became a hairdresser, and it was one particularly shit winter. And I said, I just can't keep doing this. I just don't want this work.
And Where did you grow up in Ireland?
Oh, sorry. I grew up in a small town in the southwest of Ireland, in a town called Abbeyfield, and my family were shopkeepers. And so my family were all business people within the one community. We all grew up self-employed all our lives. And so it's just a very typical small town upbringing in the southwest of Ireland. Very simple, very straightforward, with its usual ups and downs of any small town anywhere in the world, Dave. And school was never my favorite place. I always tended to be, I've always kind of had a bit of an independent streak, so school didn't quite line up. So there was no third level for me. I had no interest in going on to third level college. None, zero, nada, never interested in me whatsoever. And I just always assumed that I would find something that I would go into business with. It was as simple as that. And so I was farting around for a year or two. I was working in the family business, and I was and I fell into this job. I was offered it through a friend to go work in a forestry, planting trees during the planting season, and maintenance during the off season and all of that. And that's what I was doing for a year and a half. And this particular winter was so bad. And I made a suggestion to my mother. I said, I got to do something that's with my hands, but it's got to be dry and clean and warm. And that was basically what I had in my mind. And the Manns originally came from Germany, from southern Germany to Ireland, and our family were church builders. That's that'll tell you the history of the Mann family. We were church builders in Europe, and we came to Ireland and settled in Abbeyfield to build a church in Abbeyfield, and my family never left, and that's how we wound up in the hometown that I was in. So carpentry and masonry were in my family for generations. And it was my father and his brother that never continued that. And I somehow felt the draw to work with my hands and do so. I started a bit of carpentry on the side, but I found it no interest in making doors and shit. Like, I was trying to carve and do all kinds of stuff. So I knew I had a thing for working with my hands. And my mother made a suggestion, go try hairdressing. And I came back from work one day, and she said to me, there's a school in the neighbouring city, Limerick. I rang them. She said, you can go in and spend a day or two with them free of charge to see what you like it. And I walked through the door, and within an hour of walking through the door, I knew this is what I was going to do. I knew it instantly. I fucking fell in love with the job. And I then spent the next almost 35 years in the company of women. For the next 35 years, working with them, working on them, working for me. It's been quite a journey. It's been quite a journey. But along the way, Dave, I had suffered. I'd suffered in my life at a younger stage, in a couple of periods around the formative time of our lives, around 9, 10, 11, up to about 14, 15, that involved quite a share of violence at school. On the first instance with a teacher, and the second instance with an older boy at school, and it was very violent, and I was in boarding school, and it was all a mess. So it had left its mark on me. And so I developed a taste in for alcohol and other nefarious activities. And so by the time I was in my late teens, early 20s, I had a breakdown at 19. Um, things on the internal world were really bad. So on the outside, I was working and I was really enjoying the job, and it was a great distraction, and the hairdressing was all great. But on the inside, it's the old adage of laughing on the outside, crying on the inside. And so I just ambled my way through life and did what I was doing. But around 2006, 2007, I bottomed out again. So I began a journey then with a coach at that stage to see what I could do. And originally it looked like business to me that needed to be done and whatever, because when we're looking to solve what's really going on in here, the habit is that we want to go and look outside ourselves for the answer. So we fall into all kinds of areas. And up to that stage, it was all about pain management through substance abuse, that kind of distraction. Then I figured it must be my business. So there was a business coach and yada, yada, yada. And about a year and a half into that relationship, he said to me one evening, he said, the kind of help that you need is not the kind of help that I can give you. So that set me on a brand new journey then of really going into personal development. This is 14 years ago now. And it was fine. I was kind of getting there, and I was slipping back, and I was getting there, and I was slipping back, and I was getting there, and I was slipping back. And then I had a very serious car accident, and it was quite a profound moment for me in that sense that it's quite surprising that when you accept your death, and then you wake up, you're quite surprised that you're still alive, and I had a profound insight into the nature of reality essentially, but I didn't know what happened. And for about another 6 to 12 months, the wheels really came off my life again, despite all the help and all the self-development. And then my brother-in-law got sick. And in that period of my brother-in-law getting sick, I knew that I'll always say this: when somebody close that you love passes, they'll always leave you a gift. Now, it's not a material gift, but it's a gift of insight, a gift of love, if you hear it. And he gave me the gift of life, because I knew I couldn't live my life the way I was going at that stage. I really knew that there's something that had to fundamentally have to change, because something happened in the car accident. I had a vision of something, but I didn't know what it was. So that really then began my journey into, I had a good hand on NLP and all of that stuff, but I really started to go right into it then. And I spent time in Canterbury University, and I really went into but it was giving me everything, but I was always short of something. I could never understand. I knew that my pilot light was being pointed in a different direction. And I tried this course, and it was everything I thought it would be, and then it wasn't. There was something always at the end of it. There was a but. I couldn't quite understand what I was missing. And then around the end of 2012, Simon sent me an audio.
Which audio?
Jamie Smart audio. Jamie Smart that does clarity in London. Called "If the Secret's So Great, Where's My Ferrari?" Why? And so I heard it, and Simon had heard it, and he was laughing on the phone, and he was cracking me up, and he said to me, he said, yeah, it's about your thinking, it's about your thinking. And he said, no, you're not hearing it. Go back again. So I remember over a couple of weeks listening to this whole weekend seminar 3 or 4 times. And it was kind of frustrating, because I knew I could hear something, but Simon was saying to me, you're not hearing it, you're not hearing it, you're not hearing it. And I remember having a chat with my nephew, whose father is the man that passed away. And we were talking, and I don't know what he said, but in that moment, I could see exactly how his whole world got put together. Because what had happened was, inside that accident, I began to see the nature of belief. I just literally, I've written down in a journal I wrote shortly, literally about 3 days after the accident, if everything I believed before the accident was a lie, then everything after the accident must also be a lie. I basically seen through the nature of belief, which is the nature of thought, which is the nature of experience. And I just knew that everything that was stacking up in my life didn't make sense, because if I had died, then everything would have died with me. So what was that question? What was I doing? How was I making my world up? That was literally what had happened. And in that instant, everything connected. That couple of years connected in that moment. And that began the real deep spiritual journey then. Took me into the principles, the three principles of mind, thought, and consciousness. Because I had tried the other modalities like mindfulness and CBT. They were all giving me something, but they weren't giving me enough to answer that fundamental question: what creates the nature of our experience? And that led me then on this almost 8-year journey of this. I literally, that happened on a Thursday evening chatting to my nephew Michael. And on Friday morning, I got on the phone, no idea where I was going to get the money, but I committed to doing Jamie Smart's course. That was literally it. I hadn't even told my wife I came after committing 10 grand to a course that we don't have 10 grand for, and I'm going to have to fly to London at least once a month for the next 7 to 8 months. You know what I mean? In the darkest economic period of Ireland at the time, like, you know, but we found it. And so I've spent the last 7 years in particular, 7 years at this side of it, looking into the nature of reality, how we tend to create our worlds, how we tend to experience reality, etc. And it led me into areas of like non-duality and stuff, which had brought me back out of it because I felt it was very stark. It was too crisp. It lacked that emotional sense of why we're living here. You know, the rush off the planet. When we get uber spiritual, we miss the point about living here as well, you know. And it was about finding that balance. And essentially, at the end of the day, if you're not living the love of your life, Dave, you're not living.
Well, I just wanted to let you flow for a second. That was an awesome synopsis of your life. I want to drop a quote from the Persian poet Rumi, who said, "Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you've built against it." So you talked about that in your story, that at one point you realized you had still been seeking answers outside, and all the answers were within. What barriers were holding you back up until that point, especially when the dark economic times are present and you have to make this $10,000 investment to go and follow your heart and chase your dreams? What kind of barriers came up for you?
Are we talking internally? Psychologically, are we talking about? Look, we can talk about the physical ones in the sense of, obviously business was just ticking over. I was able to pay the wages, I was able to pay the mortgage, and I was pretty much able to keep our roof over our head. That was about, you know, we were riding by the seat of our pants at that stage. So you can pretty much assume that was fucking a done deal. It was tight on the material end of it. But up to that moment of that conversation with my nephew, it was the seeking was the biggest single barrier. Because what happens, Dave, for all of us is that when we're looking to discover what it is that's making us happy and whatever, because we are geared to seek externally, it looks like to us that our happiness is coming from that, or our joy is coming from that, or from whatever. But what it does is it provides a momentary step away from what's actually going on in here. So it looks to me that it was the new car, or it was the next job, or it was something, you know, or the business was growing. And all are wonderful things, don't get me wrong. It's lovely to have them as an extension of experience, as opposed to creating experience. And so when it looks to you like, you know, your new BMW is making you happy, or your new house is making you happy, or whatever, they only become momentary distractions, because we don't recognize that our experience, our happiness, our joy, love is all inside us. So that's what happened literally, was the moment that I saw that with my nephew, everything else just fell into place for that over the next 7 years. Literally, I followed my heart since then. But prior to that, what barrier would have been my fear of living, my fear of
Living freely?
Yes, but the experience of coming to peace with myself. Because up to that stage, I think, and I'll always report this from my own coach, Simon, the very first lesson that I learned that I didn't realize the depth of, until time later on down the road, was that I'm okay.
That you're enough.
That I'm enough. That took a long time for that to bed in,
Oh,
because I was looking for the answers outside, like I say, back to, but the moment that I saw that the very thing that I was looking for was in this connection here, everything just changed. Literally in an instant, the insight was up. The download was instant. It literally was instant. I knew in that moment that my life, I'd found the direction I needed to go in, and I since have followed that. But prior to that, I was looking for different answers, like we all do. We seek. But what is not added to the individual, which I think is very, very important, is we seek to understand. It looks to us like we're seeking for a fix, but not really. We're seeking to understand.
Yeah, I mean, I think that maybe at a certain point you realize that you need to go down that road, but for so many of us, there's such this cloud of money, looks, and power, right? I'm going to drop another quote from our man Al Pacino in the movie Scarface, where he goes,
"Hello to my little friend."
Yeah, he goes, in this country, you got to make the money first. Then when you get the money, you get the power. Then when you get the power, then you get the woman. And it seems like that line still very much holds true in lots of men in societies
Absolutely.
all over the world, where they're trying to become the alpha male, the ultimate man, and they're trying to attract their perfect 10. So let's dive into this perfect life scenario where you're going to have all the money, all the power, and all the women. Why is this a complete and utter bullshit?
Well, my very first answer would be because it is complete and utter bullshit. All right. And let's go back to Al Pacino. He says you got to have, what they say, you got to have the money.
The money, then you get the power, and then you get the woman.
Okay, right. The moment that you realize that you need something to complete you, you're lost. The moment you see, it appears to you like I am incomplete without, we're lost, because we're now back to the externalization of it. Now, see this here? This all became very popular back in the 90s in the rave period. When the house music was really starting to take off and the dance scene. And prior to that, it was, guys didn't shave their heads. But once the dance culture began, everyone started shaving their heads because it was a cooler thing to do, like at 3 o'clock in the morning when you were dancing the legs off yourself for 6 hours at that stage, But I started losing my hair at 16. I was very young to start going bald. So by the time I was 18, 19, so prior to baldness being cool, I was bald by my late teens, which is quite unusual. And that turned out to be one of the best things that ever happened to me. Because rather than it becoming a disadvantage to me, I turned out to be the only guy inside the nightclub with his head shaved. And suddenly I had my opening line to every single woman I stood beside inside the nightclub, because I would, you with me? So what would appear to be the worst thing that can happen in your life at that stage turned out for me to be one of the best things that happened. So, when we look at what we perceive as false, we're lacking in something, quite often be the very thing we need to look at as why we think we're lacking. So when guys think that they need all the money, that means I'm so insecure that I don't see myself as enough. And now that I have all this money, I garner this power so I can get the world to do exactly what I want it to do, to make me happy. And now that I have all the money, that I can make it happen, now that I have all the power, that I can bend the universe to my will, the women will automatically come as well because they'll be attracted to it. Yeah, a certain kind of woman is attracted to it. But what happens when the next, rich, powerful guy comes along? She just goes, and off she moves. If that's the kind of person that you're looking to attract in your life, you're always going to be a seeker because they're going to just keep moving along to the next handsome, rich, powerful guy.
What's the opposite of being a seeker?
A non-seeker. Somebody, seriously, you see, what happened, what I found was this. I spent days, weeks, months, years, literally, in books, in videos, in audios, looking for the answer all the time. So what I'll say to this and to the guys that are listening here, the answer isn't in the book, the video, the audio, even in us. It's what you hear and make sense of is telling you how you see your world. So when guys are feeling insecure and they feel, just for argument's sake, they feel they need the money or, to complete them, just picking the obvious one. What they're actually saying, what's actually going on is, I now have a view of the world, a belief that money is what makes me attractive. Not seeing that that is actually a belief. That is actually how I see the world right now. So the answer isn't in getting the money. The answer is in, look how I see the world. Oh my God, I have made up this whole story that I need all this money to be attractive. But if you look at the scenarios, if you look at the stories, if you look at the movies, if you look at social media, if you're looking at all that stuff, it's always the rich, handsome guy that gets the cute blonde.
Except in Russia.
Because they're full of cute blondes. But it's a stereotypical thing. But my point is, it's reinforced. The answer is always kind of reinforced in the media and in a lot of the stuff that we consume. But it never says what's actually happening is, this is how I see the world. And it's the guy who understands how he sees his own world and how he's at peace with his own world is the guy that's ultimately the most attractive to a woman. Is ultimately the most attractive to a woman. I mean, we see it in pictures. You often wonder, why the hell is this one with this guy? He's not your stereotypical. He's a bit pudgy and he's a bit grey and he's a bit off.
He's probably got the money and the power, right?
But he may not. He may not, because in a lot of cases, women tend to not just look at that. Yeah, it helps to a certain degree, but it's not really the story, because at the end of the day, and I know this from my experience of dealing with women over 35 years, every single day, it starts there, but I can guarantee you very quickly women are dropping into this space much quicker. And they're saying to themselves, a rich arsehole is still an arsehole.
Yeah, I think that it's not just what he has externally. It's also those internal traits of leadership, of dominance, of assuredness within himself that he shows.
Yes.
And it's something that you don't need to have a lot of money to embody those qualities. Yeah. But we characterize the two as correlated, even though they don't have to be. And that's where a lot of guys get caught up in their own story, in their own narrative of the journey that they need to go on, that they've been force fed by their families and by the society. You know, I remember growing up, it's like, you got to be, I'm supposed to be a lawyer right now, okay? Or a doctor, or some, you know, 9 to 5 job, which can be fun, which I did last year when you're traveling the world. But when you're stuck behind a desk, behind a computer, in an office, that can really eat away at you. And now, with social media so prevalent, you can choose to completely be off social media, which is fine. But most people aren't. Most people are on it. And so then they see other people and they see the glamour, they see the women, they see the fame, and they wonder, why is that not me? What do I need to do to get that?
Mhm.
And then with all of the marketing that gets pumped into our forefrontal cortex these days of money, you know, how do I get the 10K months? How do I get that girlfriend in 90 days? We start to create uh, this belief that it's fine to create that belief if it actually was going to help you in your life. You know, you were talking about an audiobook that changed your life. I had a friend of mine that recommended I listen to this Kevin Trudeau, Your Wish is Your Command. Highly recommend it to all you guys that are listening. And he said that the most foundational, fundamental um, aspect of being successful is having a mentor and always being an apprentice. Doesn't matter what stage you're at in your life. But most people will be like, ah, fuck that shit. You know, I don't need a mentor. I've got my own
Always be
business.
learning.
Yeah, I've got my own business. I'm the coach. I'm the teacher. I'm the professor. Why do I need a mentor? And the same thing when it comes to love, when it comes to self love. Most guys will just brush that off and be like, all right, I love myself. I got that shit down. I'm confident. They'll associate confidence with love. And then they'll be like, all right, so now what's your secret, Billy? How did you sleep with the women?
You see, it becomes about bottling confidence. You know, you are right. You know, there is the confidence becomes this. You know, I have the bottle that you need. You know, take 3 sips of this every day, and you will be the most uber confident guy in the world. And you'll find a lot of guys that have the success in their lives. You know, they fall into 1 or 2 categories. They're either the guys that are together. You know, they're together in here. They get it. And the outside world is a reflection of how they see themselves, the place that they have within themselves. And like I say, make the money, drive the cars, live the lifestyle. That's not what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is that becomes an extension of who you are rather than, now that I have all this, admire me. These guys don't give a fuck whether you admire them or not. They just don't care. They're in their world. They're at peace. They're as least amount of friction internally as possible. And when they're with women and when they're in the company of women all of the time, women know that. They deep down inside, they know a guy that has a game. You know that's just working them for working them over. And they also know the guys that have got something going on in here, and ultimately they're the guys they're always attracted to.
Yeah,
But
I got to admit that being disconnected with pickup or seduction is not an excuse not to work on your charisma, not to flirt and be playful and
all the
be,
time,
you know, taking action and being dominant and, you know, playing games and leading. That's not an excuse not to do those things.
this is
And
coming
just
from here, but this is the point I'm coming to. That's literally
yeah,
the point I'm coming to. Absolutely. Because now your game is coming from a different place. It's coming from an assuredness of who you are in this world, that you can play the games, and you can dance and weave and lead and draw and dominate and tease and have all of that fun, because it's just part of the fun of living, the fullness of the experience of living, rather than the desperation of doing all the right moves. Because this stuff without heart is another form of seeking. As opposed to a natural expression of being with women, of loving women. I mean, if you're in a relationship, or you want to just to be with a woman for a night or whatever it is, it's poly or it's multiple or whatever. I'm not saying that not to do these things. All I'm saying to you is that when people enter these things, if they're cool with this, if the man and the woman are cool with this, by all means, go ahead, because it's coming. It doesn't mean that you should, we're talking about a partner here for life. That's not the stuff we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is that as the situation unfolds, there is no manipulation in this. This is the openness of experience, that your whole world isn't relying on the fact of whether or not this actually unfolds in this moment like that. I must have this. Because the openness of experience here is a different thing, because when you're in that moment, when you're in with that woman, you have none of the thinking, you have none of that machinations, you have none of that, did I do all the right moves? It just comes. It's unfiltered, and the moment that you're with somebody, the connection is so much deeper. Oh, it's so much richer. The quality of that time given is so much richer. And even if it's just one night, so what? So what? And it's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the fact that when you're at peace in here, when you're at peace with who you are, the woman that's across from you knows that. And that there isn't all that thinking about whether or not I should be good at this, or whether or not I'm saying all the right things, whether or not it's this, or whether it's, because your mind is full all the time. Should I do this? Should I? And all you're doing is you're calculating your game. And the problem is, while you're calculating your game, you're missing the richness of the experience of the person that's across from you. And your head is full of, am I doing the right thing? Should I make the right move? Are you with me? And the problem is, by the time you're fucking inside your head and you're calculating all your cool moves, half the night is gone. You've missed half the night of being in the company of a beautiful woman.
Yeah, your lack of presence disabled you from taking those opportunities and those subtle hints that he or she might have been giving you to take the next step in the relationship.
You're 100% correct here, because, and I would do it it's part of what I do when I'm working with other coaches and stuff, is that when you're working with a client, when you're assessing, if your mind is assessing all of the time, looking for the answer for the client, you're not actually listening to what they're saying to you. So if your mind is full and, as you're saying, in an analytical state, the problem is you're so busy looking at what's going on up inside in your head. Am I saying the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? Is this what I'm supposed to do here? Is this cue for this? Is that you get so focused on on the stories and the game that's going on inside in your head that you miss the presence of being with another beautiful human being. And what happens is we narrow down our focus so narrow to the game that's going on in our head that we missed every single opportunity that shows up, because we're singularly focused on one thing and we're automatically shutting down everything else, because we have this massive expectation based on the game we're playing. And we're so focused on our own thinking, so focused on the story in our own head, that we're missing half the night of being with this beautiful person. So what I have found in my own experience, and and anybody that's listening to this will recognize this, I'm sure you do, Dave, nights that you've gone out and, Dave, what's the plan tonight? Man, I have no idea. I'm open to any experience tonight. and you go out and you have this most amazing night where you've just let the night take you. And you'll find yourself in different bars or different clubs and different company, people and situations that you never thought you'd find yourself in, but you have these amazing times.
Yeah, in that pickup terminology, they call it freedom from outcome.
Freedom from outcome.
So there are a lot of concepts, right, in
Yes.
that side of the dating world that are positive and make sense.
Totally.
But it's clouded by the perfect 10 scenario and the walking down the street, oh, she's so hot, she's so beautiful. So what is hot and beautiful to you, Billy? What is your perfect 10?
Oh, Jesus. I'm probably going to be tad controversial here. Okay.
Go for it.
I was 35 years working with women. So I have worked with women from the age of whatever all the way to my oldest client, who only very recently passed away at 97 years of age. She passed away during lockdown. So I've had the span of working, and I had the company of women every day for that period of time. And I can tell you this, when you're sitting and you are standing and you're looking at a woman every single day, the thing that a hairdresser in our situation would have had to do at the time is you have to assess everything. When it comes to what they want from their hair and stuff, I mean, a soccer mom who's coming in doesn't want a pink Mohican. You know what I'm trying to say to you, for the argument, for just as an argument. So she wants something that expresses who her life is, etc. And that's where our work would come in.
Billy, right? What's the pink Mohican?
Do you know when when the head is shaved and and she's a soccer mom, she's not going to turn up like with a foot high pink Mohican haircut. You know what I mean? Okay. It's just not going to happen. All right. But what I discovered in all of this, which really stunned me, was I love women. Period. And every woman that sits in my chair is beautiful. Because I just began to see that my job is just to externalize that in my work. And it brought me to look at what a hot 10 was. What it meant to, in the long term of what a hot 10 is. And then I began to see that itself is a story, that there are certain types of physical attributes that I like in a woman, that I'm drawn to, certainly. But was it really a hot 10? Or was it what I was told was a hot 10? You with me? And for a long time, my assessment of what a hot 10 was what I was told a hot 10 was. Because this is what you're told is a hot 10. You only have to flick on TikTok. You only have to flick on any of the social media channels, and there's a certain type of gym bunny body. But that's there. No, beautiful looking women, don't get me wrong now. But we are being constantly told that this is the hot 10. Okay? But back to expectations again. If you have expectations that this is going to be a hot 10, and this is the only woman that's a hot 10, you've missed one to dine.
I'll meet these guys in cities all over the world, and sometimes I'll go out with them and give them a few helpful hints. Mm-hmm. And what's the biggest number one objection that I'll get as to why a guy won't want to go and talk to a girl? You take a guess? Take a guess, Billy. Go for it.
I'm going to say her weight.
She's not my type. And I go, bro, you don't even know what your type is anymore.
You're making that shit up.
Yeah. If you would go and actually get to know her, then you can come back to me and tell me that she's not your type.
Exactly.
But until that point, you're not your type because you're rejecting yourself from meeting other people, from diving into the experience of connection and what
you're hitting the most important word there, Dave, all the time: connection. And connection comes from the fullness of your own openness to the experience as it is in front of you, beyond expectation. So we're pointing to exactly the same thing from different language, from different perspectives, different understandings of it. But we're both pointing to the same thing, that the secret is in the openness and our own understanding of the stories that we have created about what we assume a hot 10 is. That's only based on, bits and pieces of information that we've gathered, that we've had a pleasant sensation with this one or a pleasant sensation with that one, and our system has designed and creates a short circuiting then, like that this is the perfect 10 from all the information collated. Without ever stopping and kind of going, is that actually true? Or did I just make that shit up? And the point is that we're making shit up all the time. We just don't stop to question. So we seek then an answer for the stuff that we're making up, rather than seeking to understand why we made this shit up in the first place.
Billy, final question, because we're gonna end the interview, just because my interviews have been going a little bit too long, and we like to try to keep them to an hour. So, final question is: someone told me that you're a dating coach for other dating coaches. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, where do most dating coaches get it wrong?
In believing and teaching that if you get this perfect woman, all your insecurities in the world will disappear. That you are going to be absolutely sorted. This is the single answer of your life. And what happens with a lot of coaches that develop a certain pitter patter, about their game and about their technique and about objection management and all of the, and all the different cues that's used. It looks like that is the answer to dealing with insecurity. And what happens is that a lot of dating coaches, they say then is that I found this to manage my insecurity as the best way of going forward in my life. So the more women I have in my life, the less secure I am, because that's what I believe to be true. And innocently then they begin to teach that. And then lots of guys who are feeling deeply insecure and feeling, that they're frustrated for whatever reason, believe that this is the only way they're going to do it. And what happens with a lot of dating coaches then is that they forget that there's a massive amount of expectation then built into the technique, and is built into like 30-day challenges is a particular favorite of mine. Guys who have to white knuckle their way to talking to women, and like this whole industry that grew up around this created a problem that never existed: how to talk to women. And suddenly this became a problem that was never a problem before. Why did talking to women become suddenly a huge issue that required people to learn how to talk to women?
I think it existed. I don't know if I 100% agree with that. I think there's always been guys in different societies who have had an easier time connecting and, had more innate confidence and others who have had a more traumatic experience and traumatic past.
Right.
So
okay. No, you're dead right, Dave. You're absolutely dead right.
Yeah, they're like a little bit more shy or insecure, or maybe they're just not even into women, but that wasn't a thing back in the day. So they had to like force themselves to do that. Okay. And then it got to this place where it was like cool to go out with your friends and try to see how many that you could get under your belt.
But see, you are right, Dave. I'm agreeing with you entirely.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying to you is the fact that a coach that then doesn't understand that the shyness or the lack of confidence or all of those things are about the reality that we have created for ourselves, that doesn't make it true. Are you with me? it looks then like to me like I need to white knuckle my way through breaking through resistance, breaking through this barrier, breaking through this barrier. I'm going to need this to be this. Are you with me? The moment that we begin to understand that that this lack of confidence, is the difference between a guy who turns up with confidence in his, in who he is, and a guy who suffers from a lack of confidence is only one thing. Only one thing. The guy that has confidence doesn't even think of the fact that he has no confidence. It's just not an issue to him.
But without the experience, it's very hard to garner that confidence because and this is my perspective and my
Mm-hmm.
personal, life
Mm-hmm.
experience, that you can give the guy the sword and he can be like, "Oh yeah, I know how to use it," but until he goes out and uses it 100,000 times, he's not actually going to be good at using it. He's not actually going to be experienced. He's not actually going to have that reference experience confidence, that muscle memory.
Yes.
So, um, at least in my perspective, I just think that we've got it a
You're
little bit.
100% correct.
Yeah,
Bruce Lee would say, I never fear the guy that knows 10,000 kicks.
exactly.
I
I
fear
just
the
I
guy
think
that
that
knows
we've
one
got
kick
it
10,000 times.
a little bit backwards in parts of the, dating and attraction world, which is, first you got to go out and attract, and then you can fix your internal problems after. And I mean, you can try to do them at the same time, but that could be a little bit difficult for some, and it might be a lot more beneficial to many to work with a coach, okay, or a mentor who's going to
Absolutely.
help you to let go of all the things that are holding you back in your life from having healthy mindsets, because
Totally.
that's ultimately the key to unlocking your true potential. And then when you go out and start taking the shots, practicing your skill, whatever it is, whether it's basketball or talking to women or metaphysics, I don't care. um, your results are going to come with a lot less resistance and a lot
Agreed.
more flow.
So you're now pointing to, again, we're both looking at the same thing. Okay. Like when a guy is going through that experience, and suddenly realizes he's not going to die, when he talks to her, it all goes pear-shaped, or whatever, that he's going to survive the experience. The reason why we suffer from self-esteem, self-worth, confidence issues, etc., is because we have a belief that this is all going to go pear-shaped. And if something goes pear-shaped out there into this, I'm not going to survive it. So I can't put myself out there, I can't do these things, etc. But when you begin to see the deeper game in here, what happens is that you recognize that that nervousness that you were feeling about approaching a beautiful woman inside in the bar is a reflection of the story that you have been telling yourself, rather than the truth of actually approaching a beautiful woman inside in the bar. And when you recognize that the two of them are not the same thing, it's not the beautiful woman inside in the bar that's causing you to be nervous. It's the story you've been telling yourself about talking to this beautiful woman
And
that's
we'll
actually
use
making.
the example of meeting a woman online, because right now it's kind of hard to meet
Mhm.
a woman on the bar, at the bar. But for example, online, you have this story that you need the perfect line, that you need the perfect bio, okay, or the perfect pictures, which, as a guy who's really into branding and photography,
Yeah,
I understand
that
the
would be your area. I would have nothing on that
yeah,
now.
well, I understand the
Mm.
importance and significance of it, but if it's not coming off as authentic, if it's not coming off as real, and you're not able to truly express the way that you feel, even through the text messages leading up to the meetup, um, the meetup is probably not going to be as as powerful and significant as it could have been. And
Absolutely. There
with
was
that being said,
a young, beautiful woman that I know very, very well, who a stunner now, worked with me. Always had this policy of it's better to be a rich man's sweetheart than a poor man's love. And so the kind of guys that she went after were the guys that fulfilled that particular criteria, that belief. And I used to kind of go, okay, and she'd say to me, but it's better this way, and it's better this way, and it's better. I said, okay, all right. And so all the guys that had all the external trappings, the money, the car, the house, etc. But she was rolling from one to another, all of the time. And she was trying to fulfill that story that she had in her head herself about it's better to be a rich man's sweetheart than a poor man's love. And I used to say to her, you're not poor when you have love. The rest of your life will tend to flow out of that. Because when you're coming from a place of well-being within yourself, there is no friction. And you'll get all the wealth and all the material gains in your life because you're moving without friction. You're not lacking in something. And ironically, the guy that she's with for the last 3 years is an average everyday Joe. Smashing guy, he is a lovely guy. He works hard, he's got a job, he's doesn't drive the top end sedans, he's drives a nice car, he works hard, he's a good guy. You know him, like when you talk to him, like he's together. And a lot of that stuff just does not bother him. And they are madly in love. So the guy that she spent approximately 7 years looking for turned out to be in the exact opposite direction to where she'd spent that 7 years looking.
well, that's a beautiful story to leave us off. So if someone connected with your message and your story and your words today, how can they reach out to you for a little more advice?
I'm the easiest guy to find. They'll find me under Billy Mann Coaching on Facebook and on Instagram. Just DM me there. That's it. Either place they will locate me there. As simple as that. BILLYMANN. Billy Mann. 2 L's, 2 N's. Coaching. And I'm the only handsome bald one there. But
All right,
if I'm able to leave them with this,
yeah,
and I will repeat this to any guy that's listening to all of this, you are okay. You are enough. You only think you're not. That's it. You only think you're not. You're already coming from a place of wholeness and a place of completeness. And in that space in here, that's the love that guides you. Look inwards for the answer. Reflect inwards for the love. Not out here, in here. And you'll discover everything that you've always looked for. That wholeness and that completeness is always yours.
Beautiful words. All right. We'll talk soon. You guys know where to find me, DaveGoldieVolve.com. On to the next episode. Peace.